Welcome back to Coast Vue. I really enjoyed that conversation with Mayor Kenny Holloway. The city of Ocean Springs, man, let's just face it, they're undergoing a renaissance as we speak. And it's always good to check in with him. Hey, now we're going to shift gears. I've been really looking forward to this conversation. Ray Bellande is a longtime historian here in coastal Mississippi. And Chelsea Prince is involved in the Ocean Springs Historical Society. And I've asked him to join us today. You're probably going to hear more from Ray in future shows as we sort of boil down on his incredible, I mean, he's a walking database when it comes to the history of coastal Mississippi. And I'm excited about having them both on the show today. So Ray and Chelsea, how y'all doing?
Good, thank you.
Bonjour, Monsieur.
Bonjour. See, Ray mentioned before the show that he knew what the name Coast Vue, V-U-E, it's a French word that speaks to the visual perception of a region, which is why we called Coast Vue what we call it. Ray, why don't you do this? And Chelsea, we'll come to you next. Ray, give us a little background. How did you end up getting so much into history?
Good question. My career was in the oil business as a petroleum geologist. But as a child, I was interested in history, genealogy, asked too many questions, my mother said. But when I came to Ocean Springs, I came as a windsurfer in 1990. And you kind of get bored with the beach after a while. So I had to find something to do somewhat creatively. So I met Mr. J.K. Lemon and spent hours in conversation and became somewhat enthralled with the history of Ocean Springs. And as I asked questions, he didn't know the answers. So I said, oh, okay, well, I'll find out for you. So in a matter of a year or two, and I would write up what I wrote. So eventually I had enough stories, and I went to James Ricketts at the Ocean Springs Record and said, man, look, I got all this stuff, and can I publish it? And he said, sure. So I started a 13-year career of a weekly column, changed names every now and then. Originally, it was called Sous les Chaines, as you know, being a French linguist, Under the Oaks, which is appropriate for Ocean Springs. So by doing that, after 13 years, I had all this stuff. So I said, man, I need to put this on the internet and share it with people. And which I have, and then kind of got bored with Ocean Springs and said, hell, I'm a Biloxi boy. I need to learn something about Biloxi, which I didn't know a whole hell of a lot, as you might know. So I spent I'm still working on Biloxi. It has, and don't tell Holloway this, but it has a much more incredible history than Biloxi. And I don't mean to diminish our history, but Biloxi has, and I don't have to tell you, but people are writing books about Biloxi. We've got, recently by John Grisham's book. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it.
Oh, yeah.
Boys from Biloxi.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you stole my title, but about 10 years ago, I wrote a story called The Biloxi Boys. And it was about George Orr, Fortune Meyer, and Manuel Jelanovich, who are the three most well-known Biloxi potters, other than myself and a few others anyway.
So
sorry,
Ray,
I got carried away.
No, that's very good. And there's so much there, and we'll come back to Chelsea in a second. But I wanted you to know that I grew up in Gulfport. I moved here from Alabama when I was 4. But I married into the Bohanovich clan, Pete Bohanovich.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and Miss
Annette. They're from the Brock in
yeah. Well, and Split. I mean, from that area, and so anyway, and Havar is what I meant to say. Havar, her grandfather came from one, and her grandmother from the other. Brock and Havar.
Well, let me tell you how to pronounce it. It's Hawar.
Hawar. There you go.
Hawar.
Well, and I actually went and spent.
But I learned that from a Calouse, and they were from Hawar.
We went to spend some time in Croatia a couple of years ago, and
wonderful. Went
to all these places, and we went north, and then we went all the way. We ended our time there in Dubrovnik, and it was just an incredible. My son joined me. He was living in Spain at the time, and he joined us, and we toured this incredible place. But to come in contact with her heritage and my son's heritage, my kids' heritage, Their grandparents came here, as you well know, through Ellis Island and made their way to Biloxi, like so many other Croatians did. But what a rich history that is. And I've had long conversations with Fofo Gillich about it, and continue to talk about it, even today. So, Chelsea, kind of lean to your right a little bit for the YouTube and Facebook audience. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Tell me about, how did you end up in the Historical Society?
So I actually moved here almost 3 years ago, so I'm fairly new to the coast. My husband is military. He's over at Keesler Air Force Base. And whenever I move to a new area, I always like to really get to know the area. I like being outdoors. I like to find out the history. I like to take my kids out exploring. And so as I started doing that, I started having a lot of questions. I'd be like, well, what's that building? Oh, that's an old house. Who used to live there? So similar to Ray, I had questions. And so I started doing some investigation, and a lot of things I couldn't find information about. And then finally, came across Ray's amazing archives online, and you're right, he is a superstar. And I was able to find answers to the questions that I had, and he has dedicated so much time and energy into finding the history of Ocean Springs. So I really wanted, as I started to love the history of this place, and I was fascinated, I'd be shocked about some of the stories I would hear, and I'd say, what, that came from here? The French landed here first? I had no idea. And so I wanted to join a historical society. So I got in touch with different groups, and I know the 1699, they had done the reenactments in the past, and then Jose has done some things with history, but there was no organization actively researching and documenting history besides Ray. And so I kept asking Ray, I want to join a historical society. And he's like, well, maybe you should start one. And so I started one. And my husband and I have decided he gets out of the Air Force in June. And we've decided to stay in Ocean Springs because we love it here. We feel like we belong here. And I feel like its story needs to be told. But I've started a Facebook group, and we've gotten a lot of people on there sharing photos and their family stories, and I follow Ray around town, and he teaches me things, and we're having a good time.
Hey, Chelsea,
she's done a fabulous job, Ricky.
So, yeah, I bet she is. I can tell. Very articulate. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in San Diego, California area. My husband did medical school in Phoenix, Arizona area. He did residency at Eglin Air Force Base. So we lived in Niceville, and we thought we'd end up back there. We loved it. We moved here during COVID. But to our surprise, Mississippi is where our hearts are. We love it here.
that is really cool. I have spent some time in San Diego along the way, but this is a very special place on earth. There's no question about it. Ocean Springs is incredibly unique, as you know, and the more you learn about it, the more I'm sure you love that connection. In fact, I had Julian Rankin on yesterday, and Julian has done such a great job of articulating from the Walter Anderson Museum the connection between the art and the landscapes that make up coastal Mississippi, and the connection that it has with creating better communities to live in. The same thing is true about understanding the history. It's so diverse, and there's so much influence, and it's special in that way, isn't it?
It definitely is. And there's so much culture here. I've learned so many things as I've moved here. I didn't know Mardi Gras was a thing. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's all these different phrases people use here, and it is a whole different culture. And there's people from all different backgrounds. It's a real melting pot. And I didn't know until I got here. And I've absolutely been enthralled with the stories that some of the people in town share, because I feel like that's really the only information out there right now besides Ray's page is just hearing the stories of the locals. And it is very true. There is a lot of culture, and there's art here, and there's very talented people have come from Ocean Springs, very successful people. It is a very special place.
So it's got Ray, coming back to you, to see someone like Chelsea who's only been here 3 years, to find that connection and want to really understand how she can make her mark within that history. It's great for, it's like sort of like this new blood coming to town, and this guy that really understands this history and contributed to history knowledge in so many different ways. And now you guys are together. It's got to be exciting to have someone like Chelsea.
She's a hurricane of fresh air.
I bet she is. She's very articulate, for sure.
It's really strange, but if you study the history of at least the coast as I know it, the people from the outside have always come in and have been the successful merchants, innovators, religion, put things on the map. And we were described by several people as being an indolent, I'm talking about in the early 1800s.
Right.
Because the people here were simple. They basically had a subsistence living, fishing, and some, gardens. And that was life. And outsiders came in and brought stuff, culture, I guess is what would be the word.
Hey, so let's do this, Ray. When we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation and just talk about, the number of people that you are able to touch through your efforts. But this is historian Ray Bellande and Chelsea Prince, who's involved in the Ocean Springs Historical Society. In fact, she started the Ocean Springs Historical Society. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Coast Vue. We're having a wonderful conversation today about history in coastal Mississippi. And let's go back to my friends Ray Bellande and Chelsea Prince she actually started the Ocean Springs Historical Society. You were talking about Chelsea coming here from San Diego and, vis-a-vis Lord knows where all you've been because your husband was in the military. But I had a wonderful conversation on Coast Vue that is one that people keep going back to, and that is with Shari and Craig Davis. They actually started the Jackson Pearl in Ocean Springs, a wonderful wedding venue and other kind of special event venue. And they also opened up a bed and breakfast in Biloxi called the Bootleg Howl. And when Shari talked about coming here, she came here from California. In fact, they sold their business in California. They moved to Ocean Springs. When she talks about Ocean Springs, it's something I actually captured in a short clip because she talked about the community being loving and accepting, and it didn't matter who you are or where you came from or who you loved. This place accepted you. And the way she said it was so articulate and so heartfelt. But I think it really captured the Gulf Coast in a lot of ways. I mean, what we've been through so much adversity here, having been ground zero to the worst natural disaster in American history. We know in our DNA what resiliency really means, what it means to bounce back from difficult times. This is an accepting place. And so when the going gets tough, all the socioeconomic stuff goes to the wayside, and we really focus on how we can help our neighbor. And you see that, don't you, Chelsea?
I definitely see that. And I think that's really why I love it here so much, is because, yes, it's such a beautiful place, but it's also the people. And it's been that way for a long time. Everyone's able to accept those who aren't from here. And I think it's not like that in a lot of places. And I actually do feel like it's been here that I've actually been able to blossom and become myself and be accepted for interests that maybe would have been weird somewhere else. You know what I mean? Here, I feel like people celebrate the uniqueness of others. And I feel like throughout time, Ocean Springs and the whole Mississippi coast has its individual characters. We have the George Orr, we have like the Hermit of Deer Island, we have Walter Anderson, and we have these characters that I feel like are unique people who we've embraced and almost became mascots for the coast. And so I feel like it's very interesting to then come here, and I feel like every individual person is celebrated for being different and being themselves. And I feel like here I have been accepted just for being me. I have this historical society that no one knew me or knows who I am, and I have all these supporters. And I even wrote a book about Carl the Rooster, and all these people are excited about it. And I'm like, people just are so loving here and accepting. I love it.
Well, Chelsea, it says as much about you as it does about the community. The fact that someone like you came to this community, fell in love with it, was willing to connect in your way. Where did your love of history and writing and understanding, where did that come from? Because you're clearly educated and very articulate. Tell me more about where your thirst for knowledge came from.
Well, that's very nice. It came from Mississippi, honestly. I had never done anything like this before. And I've always been interested in areas and places I visit. I'd love to travel and experience things. But here it was all of a sudden I have become obsessed with Ocean Springs and coastal history. I think it's because it's been so interesting. We have the pirates, we have the French, we have the Native Americans, we have all these things and these amazing stories. And it's like, I just can't get enough of it. I mean, I drive around town and I think this Ocean Springs is like a storybook. I feel like I'm living in a novel with all these little characters. Everyone knows the shop owners. Everyone's waving and saying hi. We had our rooster who everyone knew around town in the shops. And so I just was like, this is a place that I wish other people could understand actually exists.
What we're going to do in future shows, incidentally, for people who are watching today and listening today, is we're going to have Ray back, and we're going to start to dive into some of the cool history. There's so many great stories to tell, and so many. So it really defines Melting Pot, doesn't it, Ray?
Absolutely. And in laud of Chelsea, her research and love of people has brought her into the diverse racial groups, and she's made inroads into knowing our Black community, and has worked with, we went to the Wild Game Festival on Martin Luther King Day, and Chelsea ate some alligator stew, and
I sure did.
Loved it.
It was surprisingly delicious.
So she's worked with everyone that'll listen, and I'm proud of it.
I'm learning from the best, but thank you, Ray.
Well, one of the things that I always said, I had the opportunity to lead strategic planning efforts for some major corporations, and I often said this, that you can't go to where you want to go if you don't know where you are now. And the history plays so much into our future. It's and understanding that and appreciating that and preserving that, where it's important. It's such an important part of what we do. But look, we're out of time for today. It's been Chelsea. It's been a pleasure to get to meet you.
Yes, it's so nice
and I appreciate. Thank you. I look forward to you helping to facilitate actually future conversations with Ray, because Ray, you and I are going to have some fun shows together as we really dive in.
I've got some lines to tell.
Yeah, I can't wait to tell them. That's a part of what makes this such a great place. It's been a pleasure. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks,
Ray.
You
too.
You bet. You bet. Thank you very much, and we will see you tomorrow.